Have you ever seen something so bizarre that your brain struggled to believe it was real? Earth's history is full of these moments, and today's protagonist is probably the greatest biological challenge evolution has ever produced. Imagine a creature that looks like it was assembled from the leftovers of other animals. A giant's body with the weight of an elephant, the basic skeleton of an elite killer, but with hands boasting the largest blades the world has ever seen. Therizinosaurus isn't just strange, it's proof that nature loves to subvert its own rules and transform a group of predators into something completely unexpected. Every great mystery story starts with a false lead, and this giant story is worthy of a movie script. In 1948, when the first fossils were unearthed in Mongolia, researchers were completely stumped. They found immense, flattened and curved claws, along with a few pieces of ribs. Back then, science got tied in a knot and reached a conclusion that sounds almost funny today. They described the animal as a giant sea turtle 4.5 meters long. The idea was that it would use those colossal claws to harvest algae at the bottom of the ocean, and from that confusion, the name Cheliniformis was born, which literally means turtle-shaped. It took decades for the penny to drop and for the scientific community to realize that this creature had never been anywhere near being a swimmer. In fact, we were looking at one of the most bizarre dinosaurs to ever walk on dry land. The biggest shock came when they discovered it belonged to the theropod group. To understand the weight of that, this is the same lineage that produced the greatest killers in history, like Tyrannosaurus rex, Spinosaurus, and Gigantanosaurus. But while its cousins became famous for serrated teeth and for dominating the top of the food chain, Therizinosaurus decided to take a completely opposite path. It took the DNA of this group of killers and used it to become the largest of its lineage, reaching the size of an elephant and defying everything we knew about these animals. But to understand how this creature survived being so different, we need to look at the tools that made it famous.
If this dinosaur were a comic book character, it would own the most legendary claws in the world. The Therizinosaurus holds a biological world record. It has the longest hand claws of any land animal in all of Earth's history. The bone part alone exceeded 50 centimeters, but when the animal was alive and covered by a sheath of keratin, the same material as our fingernails, each claw reached an incredible 1 meter in length. The full arm of this beast was a massive reach tool, about 2.4 to 2.5 meters long. It's as if it had two gigantic scythes attached to arms that could reach the other side of a room with ease. But here comes the twist many people ignore. Despite looking like weapons from a horror movie, modern science shows these claws were structurally fragile. Biomechanical studies reveal that because they were very flattened, they could suffer catastrophic fractures if the animal tried to use them for heavy physical combat or to dig through hard ground. So what were they for? They were precision tools for a high-level browser. The animal used the claws as hooks to pull high branches down to its mouth, acting very much like the giant ground sloths that lived much later. Besides that, they worked as the ultimate intimidation billboard. Imagine a predator trying its luck against a 6-ton giant waving 1 meter blades in the air. Even being fragile for real combat, the visual scare was enough to ensure nobody got close to this biological weapon. And if you think the hands were the only weird thing about it, wait until you see how nature redesigned the rest of its body. The transition from a lineage of agile hunters to a giant herbivore required a complete overhaul in the body engineering of Therizinosaurus. To process tons and tons of vegetation and extract energy from hard-to-digest fibers, it needed a massive internal factory. This resulted in a heavy and distinctly pot-bellied body with a backward-facing pelvis to make room for an immense and complex fermentation digestive system. Unlike the Giganotosaurus or T-Rex, which ran on their toes to gain speed, our clawed giant walked with its whole foot on the ground.
what we call a plantigrade posture, to support its colossal weight, which could reach up to 6.6 tons. It abandoned agility to focus on stability and the energy efficiency needed for its size. And if you look at its mouth, the change becomes even clearer. While its theropod cousins had teeth made for ripping meat, the bite of Therizinosaurus was surprisingly weak. It's estimated that it had a force of only 600 newtons, which is almost nothing compared to the 35,000 newtons of a T-Rex. Its focus wasn't raw power, but rather the precision of cutting leaves and shoots with its rigid beak. To help with this task, it relied on a neck about 2.2 meters long, which worked as an extra mechanical arm, allowing it to reach vegetation at the top of trees that other carnivores didn't even look at. This set of claws, long neck, and massive body didn't exist in a vacuum. It was the centerpiece of an ecosystem that looked like a garden, but was surrounded by dangers. Living in the region that is now the Gobi Desert 70 million years ago was no task for amateurs. At that time, the landscape was a wet delta, much like today's Okavango Delta, full of water channels and dense forests. The Therizinosaurus shared the space with heavy neighbors, like the giant omnivore Defied and large, long-necked dinosaurs that competed for food in the treetops. The only one that could really cause a headache was the fearsome Tarbosaurus, a super predator that was the only real threat to an adult. But our giant didn't rely only on size and claws to survive. Studies of its skull reveal that it kept the sharpened senses of its hunter ancestors. It possessed elite smell and hearing, which gave it a huge advantage in detecting any threat long before it appeared among the trees of the dense forest. Besides intelligence, it was a social animal and careful with the next generation. Breeding sites were found with several nests together in Mongolia, proving that these giants lived in colonies and protected their broods in groups during the breeding season. It was, basically, a 6-ton, 10-meter-long feathered titan, proving that evolution can be extremely creative. The Therizinosaurus teaches us that you don't need to be the most aggressive predator to dominate your environment. Sometimes just being big, smart, and having a set of claws is enough to keep the rest of the world at a distance. So, what do you think of this misunderstood giant? Leave your opinion in the comments. Would these 1-meter claws be enough to keep you away? Or would curiosity speak louder? To keep exploring Earth's greatest secrets with us, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Thanks, and see you in the next video.